Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Mike Jackness. Mike has been in the e-commerce space for over a decade and has a wealth of experience in e-commerce, marketing, SEO, and much more.
Yeah, sure. So, excellent insight on that too. And David and I are in our brands. We're dialing that in now. I used to be in the camp of you, Mike, where tell the PPC team, hey, just spend as much as you can. I want this ACOS below this, and let's go to the moon. And when that tacos gets up and passes that organic sales as that seesaw effect, your profitability, net income, it just goes away, it evaporates. And so the tacos is really crucial. And so that's great insight. I want to pivot into a little bit more of a question on it kind of is impacting sales through inventory. And this is something that's fairly new on the scene because it's been not an issue for about 18 months now. We've not been able to do anything. But Mike, previously, let's reverse 18 months ago, have you and your team tested any inventory levels specifically to the Amazon marketplace because there's a regional sales, and David and I are kind of testing this a little bit, but we're trying to find out if there is a specific software or a level where a threshold of how much inventory you send in to where you're capturing all of the sales for every region. And I guess within the last 2 weeks or 4 weeks on Amazon, we've seen most of our accounts like quadruple or go up by 4x, 5x for inventory. So we're kind of pushing those containers in there, and so now we're ready we can probably start looking at that again. So I'm curious to see if you tested this and kind of what is that level.
We first heard chatter about this in the MDS community, and then in ECF, and eventually started doing some tests ourselves and talking to our community about it. There does seem to be a pretty clear line of evidence of if you are over a particular inventory threshold for particular items, that sales do better. At first it was kind of like unexplainable. For us, it was actually what ended up happening was like on products that this is going back a couple of years now, but like products that we were starting to run out of stock on, we noticed that like our sales velocity would like go down along with the inventory count. And it like was just this really weird phenomena that we never put two and two together until someone kind of speculated this. And then we had some better testing to do. The issue right now is that like, who the heck knows from day to day? I mean, Amazon's so bipolar with inventory levels that I can't consciously, in good conscience, plan any future of our business around what my inventory levels are today. I feel like if I were to order more inventory today, and we're recording this in late February, based on my inventory levels and say, okay, I'm going to go now order a container of goods from my manufacturer in China. I'm going to go put that directly into Amazon through AGL. Like everything's copacetic again now. I'm convinced that by the time that inventory is ready to land in Amazon, they'll have changed their mind and I'll be diverting containers again back into a 3PL and at my expense. And so we are still being quite cautious with our inventory, even though like it feels like the parents have left and the kids are home with a bunch of liquor and no one's looking right now, right? It's just like, all right, let's go have a party. But we're taking a little bit more cautious approach to it because I'm just worried the day that what I don't want to have to go back through again is like looking at that red number of like you can't send anything in, like you're 6,000 units above your threshold. And man, that was a horrible feeling. I mean, God darn knows that was a really tough time. You mentioned that episode earlier about the year in review, and I recall talking about this a little bit, and now just like how hard of a year it was in e-commerce. I mean, and this was one of the worst things that like it tore me up because again, talk about death by 1,000 paper cuts. It is not cheap to having your business model shipping container directly from China into Amazon, having to divert that container because Amazon's now canceled the shipment for no good reason and won't reactivate it for you. The thing's coming off the boat and they're like, what do I do with it? Okay, well, I got to send it off to a 3PL now. Well, guess what? They want $2,000 to offload the container and put it on pallets for you. Then they're going to charge you to store it. They're going to charge you to fetch those things and send them back into Amazon. Meanwhile, now I'm over inventory. limits. And so I have things that I'm sold out of that I have the product, but I can't send it in. And so we're just going to take a bit of a cautious and wait and see approach. I have a feeling, if I was going to guess on how the year is going to go, that yeah, right now, sure, send in whatever you want. Like, it's not the holidays, but when Prime Day comes or Black Friday, later this year, and we're going through the holiday season again, from what I read and understand of Amazon, they haven't just suddenly added 4x infrastructure and square footage. So I think it's like a false sense of security that we might all have right now. I hope I'm wrong, please. Like, let me be wrong about this, please. But again, we're taking a cautious approach to it, just to be safe, to not be in that situation again.
To just expand on this a little bit, so people always talk about long-term storage fees, which are very notable and something you should pay attention to. However, storage fees are kind of a sleeper fee, I would say. And, Helium 10 just this week released a heat map tool. You plug in your SKU, it'll show you what warehouses it's in. It's pretty neat. And, my thought is, all right, if I have 90 days of inventory on hand, and that is I will only be selling in, say, the East Coast. I know that's kind of a simplified, but if I get to 120 days, now I'm on the East Coast and West Coast. Well, then that makes sense. The juice is worth the squeeze to incur additional storage fees.
Mm-hmm.
However, if that cutoff is at 120 days and I send in 150 days, well, I am going to get hit with additional storage fees, which make up if you manage your inventory correctly, a much bigger portion of your overall storage expenses than long-term storage fees. And so it's, I'm interested to see where this goes and what the buzz is with this new Helium 10 tool. I really am.
I'm curious what your experience has been. I mean, for me, we're targeting 30 to 60 days and haven't really seen that drop off of, oh my gosh, like our velocity is down until we're below like 15 or 10 days. So I'm curious, this will be interesting. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we should, if we get more inventory in there, it would help nationwide. But from our perspective, and we have some pretty fast moving products that are, doing 200 units a day or something like that. Until they get down to the wire, we don't really see issues.
I would say our under 30 days is when we tend to notice
30.
it.
Interesting. Okay.
What we've done is we have, and this was during I will call it the inventory restriction pandemic. I remember sitting at a Starbucks in Paducah, Kentucky in June, looking at all my best sellers out of stock. I had 10,000 units over my inventory and, almost having a panic attack. I mean, I just was like, the math does not work here for me to stay in business. I just left my full-time, very stable job. And so, what we did is at that point in time, and I think we're going to continue this, is we have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 products, and that's all based on profitability. And for our tier 1 products, our most profitable, highest volume, we'll shoot for around 120 days. For tier 2, 90 days, 60 days, and then 30 days. And so we stagger it. And with that method, it's hard to really determine because your best-selling products, you're ordering more. And so it's hard to analyze the math on that. But I think on the low end, we've seen the drop off below 30 days.
Interesting. I'm going to go back and do some more digging on that. I mean, we try not to ever have less than 30 days of stuff in a warehouse anyway. And before all this, we would try to keep 90 to 120 days in there because I always wanted to have plenty of inventory in there to deal with the unknown, right? Even before logistics hell. I just always like to have extra inventory in there. And yes, there is a cost to it. There's no doubt. Obviously Amazon charges storage fees. There's no doubt. But it was cheaper for us to do it that way than when you add up all the other fees of having it in a 3PL first. I mean, getting the inventory directly into Amazon, a full container of it, and inevitably you'd have more inventory in there than you needed for a while, was still cheaper. It's the way I prefer to operate the business, where you basically had unlimited amounts of inventory. But, fortunately, just like everything else, you got to adapt to, the way things are changing. And this is something that's just out of our control. My only hope is that, like, at some point over the next year, that Amazon can be consistent with their messaging and let us know how it's really going to be and stick with it. The curveballs that they threw last year were really difficult to deal with. They made a material change in our profitability, as we were talking about earlier. And it also, like, as entrepreneurs, you want to win. And I felt like I couldn't win no matter what I tried to do. Because again, like you said, 10,000 units over, we were lucky enough to never to be in that spot, but we were thousands of units over. And so you're waiting every day, refreshing the thing, wanting to send in product you already paid for that you have sitting right there. You can see it. Like, I want to just send it over here, and they wouldn't let us do it. It was tough. It was really, really tough.
Yeah, those were the dark days.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think, sorry, David, I think of the 2021, I think anybody, like, especially selling on Amazon, I think we should all get like a patch, like the pandemic 21 patch. So yeah, I went through that one. That's
it's like surviving Space Mountain at Disney World or something.
That's right. That's right. So, we're talking about inventory right now. Let's turn the corner and talk about funding inventory. And let's break this question down into a couple different tranches in terms of, like, levels of seller. You have that 0 to 500,000, and then that 500,000 to $1 million, and then that 1 million to 10 million. And what is your experience, or what would you recommend in terms of funding inventory and expansion?
Yeah, this is another one of these things where I've changed my opinion with age or just experience. At first, I was very against taking on any debt to buy inventory. Like, just, my background as a kid, never had any financial education of any kind. Like a lot of Americans, I was like, oh, credit cards seem pretty damn neat, and I'll go party now and I'll never have to pay for it. And so after being in that situation once in my life, and once I was successful paying all that off and not being in that spot, I just never wanted to be there again. Like, have any debt of any kind. It's like, if I can't afford to buy it, then I'm just not going to buy it. But the reality is that in an inventory-based business, that thinking is flawed. You're as long as you're borrowing money against a hard asset, I think that it's perfectly fine. All retailers do this, even the biggest ones, like a Walmart or Apple. Even they all have debt against inventory against their products. Makes perfect sense. It's really the only way that you can scale. Do not spend borrowed money on employees or rent or Facebook ads or Amazon ads or anything that's consumable that, you don't have something kind of like almost like the old gold standard where, like, you have $1 of debt, you have $1 of inventory. For me, we kind of try to always keep it in like the 75% range. Like, if we had $1 million in inventory, I'd be willing to take on $750,000 of debt. Just the personal level that I set. That leaves breathing room. I think it's always important to leave breathing room because you just never know when the next pandemic or something's going to hit. And one of the things I've talked recently about, just kind of bare my soul of, is being realistic. Like, all the success we had with Color It and some of the other businesses that we had and the expansion that we had, part of life and business is luck. If that all got moved by 2 years on the timeline and we were dealing with that, had that kind of debt, and we're flying that close to the sun during the pandemic, we probably would have just went bankrupt. So I think having some breathing room is really important. And it's interesting because we had this success, everybody kind of like gives us the trophy and says like how smart you are and congratulations for being so successful. But there's the other person that worked equally as hard and did all the same things, and just sometimes it's just bad timing. And so, I'm pretty cognizant of that. But I do think that the reality is that you need to have debt against your inventory, especially if you're growing. There's really no way around it. Like, the math is just, there's no other way around it. Now, you were kind of breaking things out in terms of like what to do if you're 0 to 100,000 versus 100,000 to 500,000. My way of thinking about this is not really on a dollar scale necessarily. I don't think that things change that much in these different ranges. What really seems to change is the amount of time you've been in business. That will change the types of people that are willing to talk to you. It doesn't really matter what size you are. You can do $1 million in your first year or $100,000 in your first year. Like your first year is your first year. When you go to a bank and you want to get like a line of credit from like an institution, they want to see 2 years of tax returns. The size of your business is really kind of immaterial. Amazon's a similar thing. Like when you first get started with Amazon, they want to see, I think, like either 6 or 9 months, maybe 12 months of being in business before they'll offer you their first loans. And then the size of the loan is just commensurate with your sales. And a lot of the other things that are out there, the size of the loan is just commensurate with your sales, no matter how big or small it is. That doesn't really seem to matter. I think that there's also a personal risk profile overlay that you should put on top of this. Some people are inherently very risk adverse, and some people are inherently like willing to like take huge chances. And sometimes that could be the same person, depending on what time in their life it is. I mean, when I was 21, I would do things a lot differently than I do now at 45. And so all these things are important to keep in mind, and just don't get yourself in a position that you're ultimately going to be uncomfortable with, right? I mean, if you are inherently risk adverse, then borrow 25 or 50% of your inventory. If you're willing to like really take chances and you really believe in your business and you don't think anything's going to go wrong, don't go borrow 100% if you really feel that way, or maybe even more. But the advice that I can give you is that the number that you think you feel comfortable with the day you make that decision is probably not the right answer. What ends up happening is like every day that goes by, at least for me, because we were leveraged so much, like it just wore on me. And like the thing that's creeping your mind is like, what if something goes wrong? And I think as running a podcast about e-commerce in a community, I'm sure you guys are very aware of this. You hear about all of everyone else's problems. You become a bartender. And so like they're telling you about how their account was shut down, or how this went wrong, or that went wrong, their SKU, their ACE, and they were attacked by a thing. They got sued by someone about IP that wasn't their, this like all the time you're hearing about this from every day, from every angle. And so like it made me paranoid in my own shoes. I mean, like it was really tough. And so, I mean, it really kind of like led to a panic attack eventually, where it was just like, oh my God, like I've like got to get rid of this hot potato before it burns my hand. Which, kind of led to us selling something prematurely that would have been worth a lot more if we held on to it and just didn't worry about those things. But, I also came into it with, the reason I got more and more paranoid about it is because, I'd already been in business for over 10 years on other things to this point, and been through enough life cycles to see this happen in other things. Like, I mean, the biggest thing that happened to us was, when we were online poker affiliates, and, Black Friday, which is a pretty famous date in that space. And just like your business has gone overnight to no fault of your own. And, been through a Google penalty where, like, when I was an affiliate marketer, where like Penguin and Panda came out all of a sudden one day and boom, you're screwed. And so like those same thoughts were going through my head in the Amazon space. It never happened, luckily. And knock on wood, it never will. But the important thing here to note is like, you got to always have an out, and not push yourself to a point where it's going to affect your mental well-being and your relationships with your family, or your wife or your spouse or whatever, and your own health. And so just keep those things in mind. This stuff is not worth those repercussions.
Yeah, excellent advice. Yeah, it's if you're losing sleep at night, then you probably need to change something up and pivot. So I'd like to pivot a little bit and kind of take a step back. And so, Mike, you've been an entrepreneur for a couple of decades, for a really long time. And so as anybody, as David and I, and anybody listens to the show that's an entrepreneur, you have a constant stream of ideas coming in, right? Oh, what about this? What the hell? That's a great idea. So over the years, how have you sharpened your sword to only select the ideas that how do you know which ones are going to be good and which ones you want to go with? And then how do you measure and track all of those? Like, do you have a special software, a system to measure and track and keep track of everything?
Don't have a system to keep track of everything. What I can tell you is that I think that the types of entrepreneurs that I am, I always kind of classify entrepreneurs in a couple of different buckets. There's the entrepreneur that leaves because they're leaves their job. They're very disciplined. It's like kind of like investing, very calculated for them. Then there's a person like me who's like, it's kind of like an addiction, and I do it for a whole bunch of other reasons. It's, the thrill of it kind of stuff is really got more to do with it than anything else. And the enjoyment of like building something and starting something new and all these different things. So someone like myself, because that's what I enjoy, like the tendency is like to go try to start something new constantly or do too many things, because every time you have one of these thoughts and you go execute on it, that's kind of what gives you the dopamine hit. What you also will realize through a long period of time is the depression that inevitably follows when you don't do a good job with any of it because you got way too much crap going on. And so, it wasn't really, it was a combination of like reading some stuff in books and talking to people and being in some masterminds and having other people explain it to me. But part of it is like your parents tell you, like, don't put your hand in the sliding glass door. It's going to hurt when it gets slammed. You got to like feel how much pain it is yourself before you like, don't put your hand there. Right. Some things you just kind of got to learn on your own. I was definitely in that camp. And so now, I'm focused on doing way fewer things, and realized even more recently that the fewer things is still way too many, and probably going to try to chop that in half, and then maybe chop that in half, and maybe even just do one thing. There's a book called exactly that, the one thing. And so, realistically, it's and also Traction. The book Traction really helps with this, where for the first time, I had like sat down and actually put my thoughts to paper and like wrote them out, and then realized like how ridiculous. Like I was trying to just, in your head, it seems so simple. Like I'm going to accomplish this, and this year. We're going to go do all this. I don't know how the hell we're going to do it because I got no time to think about it because I got to go do something else right this minute. And like, hey team, go figure all this out. Like, and why didn't you finish all this? Like I want to do, and I have these other ideas real quick I want to go do. And like, it would, as ridiculous as I sound right now, it's about how ridiculous it was. I mean, again, throwing myself under the bus. And so you get people that you've paid and respected in a room, and you start writing this stuff down, and you realize like how quickly, like they're kind of looking at you like, are you out of your freaking mind? And so you guys start to pick and choose and document, this is what we're going to do this year. And it needs to be a reasonable amount. And it forces you to then pick and choose. Like it's the whole exercise is picking and choosing. I want to do these 10 things. There's only time to do 7. Which 3 are not as important? You might be wrong. Maybe one of the things you drop off would have been the more important thing, but like at least you pick 7 things, get those 7 things done. That's what we're going to do this year, and focus on them. And everybody on the team knows what they are, and you march towards the same goal. And it forces me, like I can think about new ideas all day long, but if I want to go to my COO and say like, I have this new idea and I want to change our plan, like it better be damn logical, to someone who's not like me, that is logical. And so like, she'll push back, and sometimes we will change things because it makes sense. We still are small and nimble, but it stops the like crazy gyrations of like, I thought of this today, let's do this today. And then like the next day I come in, it's like, oh, forget about that, let's do this. And then like, hey boss, which one was actually supposed to work on? You're like, oh crap, like actually you got to prior. Okay, well, I don't know, like just, it keeps that from happening. And so hopefully that kind of answers your question in a roundabout way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sitting over here smiling because this personality type that you're describing is, I feel like Ken and I definitely are, I don't want to call it victims. I love it. It's like the true entrepreneurial spirit, but having a system in place to keep you within some guardrails, I think is good. To ask you not to have those ideas would be like asking a wolf not to eat meat.
Right, exactly.
Like,
it really is.
You just like, it's going to happen. And I have to say, like, from a business standpoint, that mania of a new idea of being like, yep, I'm starting a new business today. And that is a high, and it's hard to describe, but I have had that where you get rolling on a high and you're awake for 48, 72 hours. But it's always followed, well, not always, but sometimes followed with a crash where I'm spread too thin. I'm overwhelmed. And so I think you make some really good points there. So,
and until you're a certain size, there's no one to tell you no. This is the real problem, right? Like, no matter how crazy you are, like there isn't anybody around you that's going to tell you no. And it seems perfectly normal in your head. It is, is kind of the challenge. Like to yourself, it's like, oh, this is a brilliant idea. Like, why did I think of this, earlier or whatever? Like, let's go do this now instead, or let's do this. And so until you get like, once I read traction, and that was really the turning point, is I hired people to surround me to stop me.
Mhm.
Right. I mean, it's just like,
Yeah.
your job is to delegate stuff to the team. I'm in charge of helping you plan, but you tell me what they can physically get done in terms of number of things in a month or whatever time frame we're talking about, a quarter, whatever. And we work together to decide what those things are, and then I leave you alone. Like, you do not let me get you off track unless it's like, again, you agree with me that this thing that I'm bringing to you is actually got to get done. I mean, like, for instance, might be like, we're planning our quarter, we're going to go get this set of things done, and then like one day Amazon shuts down our listing. Well, of course we got to stop what we're doing and like go fix this important thing. But it, because I just found like some new software tool and I want to go test it out, is not a good reason to go do that. Or just to give a couple of examples, right, which would happen all the time, because as the guy that's like constantly trying to innovate and be in the forefront in a technology driven space, there's always a new tool or whiz bang idea, like literally every single day. And the average person can't deal with this. Like, they don't want to be bounced around on a daily basis like a pinball in a pinball machine. They want to like be told what to do, have a set of goals that they're going to achieve, and go get them done. And if you allow your team to get them done, they'll produce amazing things. It really has revolutionized my life. And so like, I still have the same problems. I still think about too many things and blah, 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 blah. But like, my team's isolated from that. And if I want to bounce to something new today, then like, I got to go do it myself, because I can't ask my team to go do it. And it's helped a lot.
Very nice. Very nice. So last question before we get to the fire round. Can you talk about Ecomcrew, the podcast, and also Ecomcrew Premium, which Ken and I are new members of and excited to be taking part.
All right, man.
Yeah. Can you speak to that? Who is it for? What stage of entrepreneur?
Well, Ecomcrew itself was born just from it's interesting. When I first joined e-commerce fuel community, I was posting a lot about what I was up to in there, and everyone seemed to be like so enamored with this stuff. And to me, it was just like Tuesday, and what I realized is that like, when we came into e-commerce, we approached it from a different direction than a lot of people. We approached it from the technology side, right? It was like the product didn't really matter so much. It was just like, we're going to go build sites and do SEO or work on new SaaS tools that can help with this, that, or the other, and take a very technical approach to it, because that was my background as IT. And so a lot of people were kind of like, again, enamored or jealous of that aspect of what we were doing. Now, what I've really realized is that like, I'm incredibly jealous of them, because they have the ability to create unique products and design things on a level that I could never dream of. There's some just amazingly talented entrepreneurs that have made some awesome products. But at any rate, like, as I was doing this stuff, I started like documenting what I was up to on Ecomcrew. Didn't really know where it would ever go. Started the podcast, and my feeling was like, you know what? Like, I'm at a point in my life where I'm pretty secure with myself and the things that I'm doing, and this feels like a niche where more good can come of this than bad. Versus in like the affiliate marketing space, clearly more bad could come from this than good by talking about what you're doing, because like every single person's trying to rank for like best credit cards or like best WordPress hosting or best online poker, whatever. And so, in that space, it was a very toxic type industry, very difficult to like collaborate and have friends. Where in this space, it's unbelievably collaborative. And I also don't really care if someone wants to go copy our stuff and make similar products. I mean, like, it does upset me on some level, but I also have just become very cognizant of the fact that like, I'm never going to sell the world's ice packs or gel pens or tactical gloves or whatever. Like, I'm just another fish in the sea on Amazon. And yes, I care about my rankings and my product, but I'm happy putting up a bunch of singles, and like, I look at the whole catalog and total business, and we're doing just fine. And so that's really why we started it. And it was very unique in the space at the time. I still think it's pretty unique in that, we talk about all of our businesses, all of our SKUs, all the things that we're doing, all the things that we're doing good, all the things we're doing bad, things that have backfired or just not done well. Like, we talk about that too. you're really trying to be a resource for people to get a better feel for what it's like to be an entrepreneur. A lot of podcasts or gurus or material out there is like pounding your chest again, talking about how easy it is, like you're going to make $1 million overnight. And I really disdain that crap. And so like, it was really to be, the counterbalance to that. And then the premium product that you're talking about is our paid subscription service where, we have courses that we developed, and we have a Facebook group. We do 2 monthly webinars. One's a open Q&A where like Dave and I get on the mic for a couple of hours, and you can come in and just ask us whatever you want. And we'll be there to help you. We've been through it. If we don't know the answer, we'll try to help you and find the answer. We don't know everything by any stretch of the imagination. And we also give email support. So whatever questions you have, you can email us at any time, and we're there to help, which I think we did a survey of our members, and that was like by far and away the thing that they wanted the most or appreciated the most, and why they signed up. We're there to help them if their account gets suspended, or ASIN gets suspended, or they're trying to find a place to put a shipment in an emergency, or talk about PPC, whatever it is. We've been through a lot of that. And so that's what Ecomcrew Premium is.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate the explanation there, and just really the you and Dave on the podcast, and being authentic and being realistic in the space. I think we need more of that. The transparency and just being open and honest. There's a lot of shady characters in the space, and to have that, you guys kind of equal that out. It's really nice. So definitely, I know we're coming up on time. We're over time. It's been a great conversation. Learned a lot. We had the fire round. Are you ready, Mike?
Let's do it. I don't know. Am I going to get actually shot here, or is it? Am I safe?
It's the remote fire round.
Okay, remote firing squad. Okay.
Yeah. What is your favorite book?
Oh, I already mentioned that. It's Traction. Like really, it's changed my life more than anything else I've ever read.
Okay, awesome. What are your hobbies?
I'm really in the chess these days. That was a pandemic-based hobby. It seemed this was pre Queen's Gambit, by the way. But I played chess a little bit as a kid. But like when the pandemic first started, I just somehow got hooked on playing, and been really enjoying chess. I love tennis, scuba diving, but we haven't actually been in quite a while. Traveling was probably my biggest hobby before the pandemic. We were actually traveling in Asia, and I got COVID in like January of 2020 in Asia while we were traveling. But have since bought a home and come back and settled down in the pandemic, but we'll probably get back to that hobby soon. I love traveling. Been to 58 countries now.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. Hopefully traveling kicks back up. What is the one thing that you do not miss about working for the man?
It's an interesting one. It's going to be answers you probably don't get typically. It's funny. The number one thing I really hated was wearing a tie. It drove me crazy. I hate it. Like it was a sales company, even though I was like in the IT department and crawling around the floor quite a bit, like working on people's computers back before I had a staff to help me with that. Like I still had to wear a tie, and I absolutely just despised having to do that. My job was in the Washington, D.C. area, Northern Virginia, and the traffic was horrible. So the commute, like I really hated the commute. But for the most part, like I really enjoyed my job. Like I feel like we talked a little bit about this earlier. Like I really enjoyed what I learned there and my friends and just the dynamic of it. And when it was time to go, I left. But yeah, the tie was, I gave away my ties when I left. And I've only worn a tie since then for funerals and weddings.
Nice. That's funny. David's cracking up for anybody watching on YouTube. David did a bit on TikTok for like what we didn't miss about the job, and the tie was like one of the number one pops on TikTok.
Let's cut off 5% of the oxygen flowing to all of our workforce's brain. It's absurd.
Yeah. And we're mad. We can't afford to have oxygen cut off to our brain. At least that's what my wife tells me all the time.
That's right. All right, last one here. What do you think sets apart successful e-commerce entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
I think it's a group of like these similar traits of like having a strong stomach and being tenacious and just willing to like push at all costs, even though if you're like staring abject failure like right in the face. It's tough. But like I have this default personality of like, I hate to lose so much that it can get me in trouble, right? I think that's what kind of can get people in trouble, entrepreneurs, where like, you just don't know when to stop. Like you got an idea or something, but like realistically, we can talk about this over a beer someday because it's a little bit of a long story, but then online poker affiliate niche that I got into that like changed our lives financially in the first 3 to 6 months in that range, whatever it was, like we basically were bankrupt or going to go bankrupt and like lose everything. And the fact that I just didn't stop and wouldn't like take no is like what got us over that hump and ended up making us literally millions of dollars. And I think most sane people would have given up. And I'm not advocating to be as crazy as I am. I think it's almost reckless and at some level, but it is kind of what it takes because there will be dark days of entrepreneurship. That is guaranteed. And if you aren't willing to to stay the course and deal with it, then you probably just shouldn't get started at all.
Okay. Yeah.
I really like that. I really like that. All right, Mike, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can head over to ecomcrew.com, ecomcrew.com, or support@ecomcrew.com is the best email. That always finds its way. We have a great staff that tells me that I've got communications I need to go answer. If it goes in my main inbox, it will end up in a black hole. We're Ecomcrew on all the social media handles, and also that's the name of the podcast. So thank you guys so much for having me and letting us also talk about Ecomcrew a little bit, and best of luck with what you got going on over here as well.
Absolutely. And we'll post links to all that in the show notes. Mike, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Firing Demand podcast and looking forward to staying in touch.
Thanks, guys.